Hello students. Today we are going to discuss about your third chapter of your chemistry syllabus, that is metals and non-metals. Now, before starting with the topics, हमें ये जानना पड़ेगा what exactly are metals and what are their properties, what are non-metals and what are their properties. Over here, we'll try to justify or we'll try to write down few major properties of both of them, metals as well as non-metals. Okay. So what is the first property of metals? Then the very first and the very foremost property of metal is that they are electropositive in nature. Now, बच्चों electropositive in nature का meaning क्या होता है? Let's try to understand. Electropositive in nature मतलब they would try to lose electrons. Please remember this. They will always try to lose electrons. वो लोग हमेशा electrons donate करेंगे. They are good donors of electron, and they would gain a positive charge. Upon losing the electrons, they will gain a positive charge. Okay. So metals को कौन सा charge पसंद है? Metals love positive charge, and because they love positive charge, they would always lose electrons, and this property of losing electrons to gain a positive charge is called as electropositivity. Okay. Second property, they are good conductors of heat and electricity. यार ये तो हमें पता ही है कि every metal is a good conductor of heat as well as electricity. वो heat भी अच्छे से conduct करता है, electricity भी अच्छे से conduct करता है. अच्छा, now what is the reason for conducting electricity? Then please remember, for conducting electricity by a metal, the reason is free electrons. Okay, metal में जो free electrons होते हैं, these free electrons are the foremost important reason why metals are good conductors of electricity. Okay, the third point, metals are lustrous. Lustrous मतलब they are shiny. Metals को अपना एक shine होता है ना? Second, the fourth property is metals are sonorous. Now, what do you mean by sonorous? That they would produce sound when struck by either a different metal or by a hard object. The next property is the number of valence electron. Now, it's kind of important है, and it is kind of common sense also. Listen, आप जब बोलते हो कि you have a metal, how will you identify whether a given element is a metal or non-metal? Many students have this problem that they don't know whether the given element is a metal or a non-metal. So just try to understand that if you have 1, 2, or 3 electrons in last shell, then the given element will be a metal. Okay, why? Because he will always try to lose electrons. Let me give you an example for this. एक example भी लेके देखते हैं, rather 3 examples लेके देखते हैं. Over here, if you talk about sodium, okay, sodium के electronic configuration is 2,8, 1. अच्छा चेक करो, सोडियम के outermost shell में कितने electrons? तो एक electron. तो क्या वो metal है? Absolutely. He will try to lose one electron, and upon losing one electron, he would get converted into Na plus 1, that is sodium with a plus charge. अच्छा similarly अगर आप बात करते हो magnesium के बारे में, which is 2,8, 2. अच्छा अब check करो, magnesium के outermost shell में you have 2 electrons. So if he loses 2 electron, he will get converted into Mg with a 2 plus charge. And finally, if you take an example of aluminium, which is 30 in atomic number, 2,8, 3, he will lose 3 electrons to get converted into Al plus 3. So, अगर आपके पास 1 electron, 2 electron या 3 electrons है in the outermost shell, then these elements will preferably be metals, or rather preferably नहीं, they will act only as metals. ठीक है, ये याद रखना. Next are the properties of non-metals. Obviously, these are absolutely opposite to the properties of metal, but इसमें से some important properties we are going to discuss. The very first property of a non-metal is that these non-metals are electronegative in nature, meaning they prefer to gain electrons. Okay, and बच्चों मुझे एक चीज बताओ, अगर electrons gain हो रहे हैं, मतलब they will gain a negative charge. Because electrons are negative, the electrons are negative. Because of that gaining of electrons, you will gain a negative charge. So what are electropositive elements? Electropositive elements are metal. Electronegative elements are non-metals. And why are you calling them as non-metals? Because they would gain electrons and gain negative charge along the process. Next, the next property is obviously non-metals are poor conductor of heat and electricity. Further, number of valence electrons. Now देखो ये भी एक important aspect है. So जैसे metals में 1, 2 and 3 electrons होते हैं last shell में, वैसे ही non-metals they preferably have 4, 5, 6 or 7 electrons in last shell. अच्छा last shell को क्या बोलते हैं? Valence shell. ये भी याद रखो, है ना? तो आपका एक और पॉइंट यहाँ पे क्लियर हो गया कि last shell is also referred as valence shell and the electrons in the valence shell are referred as valence electrons. ठीक है? Okay, let's go on with the next part of the chapter. The next part of the chapter are the facts. Now, over here, just understand what we need to do. Over here, we are trying to put down some facts which will come in handy for your examinations. Acha, what are these facts all about? So these facts are about कि कौन सा metal is kind of more reactive or which metal is abundant, which non-metal is abundant, है ना? तो ऐसे कुछ facts हम लोग यहाँ पे place कर रहे हैं. Let's see. So the very first one is most abundant inert gas. And what is the answer for this? The answer for this is argon, which is the most abundant inert gas. Further, most abundant gas in atmosphere, the answer is nitrogen. Nitrogen is the most abundant gas in the atmosphere with an abundance of 72%. Third is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust. The most abundant metal in the Earth crust is aluminium. Further, fourth one, most abundant non-metal in the Earth's crust is oxygen. ये भी याद रखो. Then noble metals. Now what are noble metals? सबसे पहले noble metals are those metals which won't react or which won't easily undergo reaction. Okay, so noble metals के category में दो आते हैं. एक आता है gold and next one is platinum. So gold and platinum both are noble metals. The sixth one, non-metals with highest melting point. Now over here, just understand, it's actually not a non-metal, but it is an allotrope. Now what do you mean by allotrope? It is a different morphology of an non-metal. मतलब हम लोग यहाँ पे लिखेंगे कार्बन जरूर, but then carbon doesn't have the highest melting point in non-metals. It's the allotrope of carbon, which is diamond, which has the highest melting point. इसको याद रखना. It's not carbon exactly, but the allotrope of carbon, which is diamond, उसका melting point सबसे ज्यादा होता है. ठीक है? In non-metals. Similarly, metal with highest melting point. Now, what is a metal with highest melting point? The answer is tungsten over here. And because of this, tungsten is used in filaments of electric bulb. Okay. Next one. Next one is element with the highest density. The answer for this is osmium and iridium. Okay. Osmium and iridium. याद रखना, iridium is a radioactive metal. Okay. तो अगर question ऐसा आता है कि okay, which is an element with highest density and radioactive, then it is iridium. Or if they ask you simple, which is an element with highest density, it will be osmium or it would be iridium. Fine. Let's go with the next one. Element with lightest density. The answer for this is hydrogen. याद रखना, जब भी कुछ lightest की बात होगी, answer most of the time hydrogen होगा. Next one, metals which are liquid at room temperature. Now you have only one metal which is liquid at room temperature, and that is mercury. Okay, mercury is the only liquid which is metal. Sorry, the only metal which is liquid at room temperature. Okay, the next one, non-metal which is liquid at room temperature. Then the non-metal which is liquid at room temperature is bromine. Remember this also. अच्छा, bromine का color क्या होता है? Bromine is reddish in color. Let's write it down. Bromine is reddish brown in color. And please remember, bromine is highly carcinogenic. Carcinogenic ka meaning it has cancer causing properties, or rather I can say it causes cancer. Long exposure to bromine causes cancer. Next one is metal which is most poisonous. Then the metal or the element which is most poisonous is plutonium. Is plutonium. And what is the atomic number of plutonium? अगर किसी ने पूछ लिया तो the atomic number of plutonium is Z equals to 94. Okay, वैसे तो ये question आएगा नहीं. You would just require to remember the name, that is plutonium is the most poisonous element. Okay, next one, metal of hope. इसको हम लोग हिंदी में आशा का मेटल या आशा का धातु भी बोलते हैं. Metal of hope is uranium. Okay, remember this, uranium, it is widely used in nuclear reactors and it is referred as a metal of hope. There are many research which are going on with uranium these days. Next one is metal in the hemoglobin. Which is a metal in hemoglobin? We find iron in hemoglobin. So the metal in hemoglobin is iron. Further, metal in chlorophyll is magnesium. Magnesium. And lastly, metals in vitamin B12 is cobalt. Vitamin B12 में cobalt होता है, and because of that, vitamin B12 is also called as cobalamin. Okay, it's also called as cobalamin. Fine. Next one, let's see. Best conductor of electricity. Now, what are best conductors of electricity? It's copper and silver. These two metals are the best conductors of electricity. And which metal is a worst conductor? Or rather, I would say not a worst conductor. Worst conductor would be too harsh on it. But yeah, उतना अच्छा कंडक्ट नहीं करता इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. तो ऐसा कौन सा मेटल है जो नहीं करता अच्छे से इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंडक्ट? The answer for that is lead. Okay. So these were some facts about some metals or some non-metals that we need to know. Okay. We also discussed about what are the basic properties of metals and non-metals. We'll meet in the next module wherein we will discuss about the reactions of metals and non-metals. Till then, thank you students. Keep studying and happy learning.